Welcome to the Investor Shed Podcast with Nick Beveridge, the ultimate source for all things investing and beyond. For free tools, tips, and tricks, go to northidahorei.com. Today's episode features Jacob Marble. Jacob is a software engineer and a real estate investor based in North Idaho. Jacob opens up to the dark side of the business, including the ups and downs of what it's like to invest out of state. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Jacob Marble, or do you go by Jake?
No, I transitioned back to Jacob, probably 10 years ago.
Nice. Thanks for coming on.
Of course,
Do the famous handshake. I like to give people an awkward stare down when we first start, just to kind of get to know them. Okay. And you put on a good front, so congratulations.
Thanks. I was being tested.
So we met a few years ago.
Yeah.
You had longer hair and a beard back then.
I did, yeah.
And you just moved up from California.
I had just moved up when we first met, yeah.
How long ago was that again? Do you remember?
3 years. We moved up to Sandpoint about 3 years ago from Orange County. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were working at Google at the time, right?
Yeah. So the transition there was after 5.5 years at Google, I was tired of working for a big company and kind of felt lack of meaning because I was basically going to work for the money and not really for anything else.
Gotcha.
So
what did you do there?
I'm a software engineer. That's what I do. I computer programmer, and
okay.
Probably my favorite thing to do in the world is programming computers. And so that's what I still do. Now today I work for a company in California. Work remotely from an office. Well, I could work from home if I want to, but I have 3 kids. So
okay.
I rent an office in Sandpoint, and my full-time gig, like 8 hours a day, is programming and working with other engineers who are also remote. So my team is about 5 engineers, and we're spread out between London and San Francisco.
Did you go to school for that, or were you kind of self-taught?
Yeah, so went to college and studied computer science, and also have I studied computer science as my major, and I have 3 minors: Spanish, Chinese, and math.
Wow.
And that's a whole other section of my life that was very rewarding. College really turned me into who I am. But yeah, that's how I basically learned how to do my job in college. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Are you a college man? I really haven't asked you that before.
You know what? I went to college, yes, for about a half a semester, North Idaho College.
Yeah.
My classes were, I took a guitar class. I took a snowboarding class, wilderness survival, mountaineering, and there was one other class. Digital photography.
Something serious in there. Okay.
Yeah. So
wow.
I did all that and I loved it, but I bought a house out of town and I decided to go move out of town because I was buying a house out of town.
Okay. So this is before you left for Florida then?
It was before I left for Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, for the second time.
And then you repented and came back to North Idaho.
I moved to Florida 3 times, yeah. But this was in between the second and third time.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Long story. We don't have to get into me today.
Right. We're talking about my favorite subject today, which is me.
Yes.
Not you. So.
I want to, and we're back to Jacob, not Jake.
Right. Jacob. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you worked in Orange County for Google as a software engineer for about 5 years.
Yeah. And
it sucked the life out of you.
Yeah. And by the end, I was tired of it. Yeah.
So okay. I thought didn't they have beanbags and stuff at their office? Didn't they try to make it as chill as possible?
Oh yeah, there's a nap room. Took a couple naps in there myself.
Was there really a nap room?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like leave the lights off. There's like adult-sized beanbags in there, 3 of them partitioned, like partitions between them, and then when you go in, you flip a card over on the door to show that you're using this beanbag number 2 or whatever.
Yeah. Aren't beanbags like uncomfortable in real life?
Yeah, they really are.
Like they look cool, but they're the worst thing to try to sleep on.
You remember Lovesac? That company Lovesac?
Vaguely.
Big beanbag company.
Yeah.
Nobody's heard of them anymore. Nobody hears about them anymore because I think the fad faded. They're just, you're right. They're uncomfortable, like a futon.
Yeah, futons are horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, So, what got you? What brought you to Idaho and turned you into a real estate investor?
So before we left California, my cousin and I decided to buy a small business out of Seattle, and it's called Zaggy. We make a radio controlled airplane.
Oh,
It's kind of a flying wing shaped thing.
really?
So we bought the business out of Seattle and then shipped all the physical assets to my cousin's home, which is in Spirit Lake, just half an hour north of here.
Okay.
So in that process, I got to come up and visit him a couple of times, unpacking type tasks, opening a bank account, and I was just shocked at how cool this place is. And so when it was time to leave Google a year later, this was the first destination I had in mind, and I've since moved on from that. So I've sold my part of that business to my cousin and more focused on real estate.
Okay. Is he still working on that business?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can go to Zaggy.com, Z-A-G-I, Zaggy.com, and buy
Z-A-G-Y.
Z-A-G-I.
Z-A-G-I, sorry.
Yeah, .com. And buy a radio controlled airplane kit out of North Idaho.
Had no idea. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
So what made you want to get out of that business, if you don't mind?
I wasn't very good at it.
Okay.
My job was the sort of the digital side, marketing and accounting, and where are we going to go? What do we need to do to improve the product so that we, grow revenue basically. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't realize how much time would be required to do that kind of a venture. And so in the end, my partner was a lot more invested than I was, and so I said, then take it, own it.
Nice.
So I think that's worked out well for both of us. I learned what I needed to learn, and he got what he needed out of it as well. So
Okay. Did you just hand it over, or did he have to buy you out?
I just handed it over.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with a bounce house company that I bought with my brother.
Yeah, I remember when you mentioned that you bought that.
Yeah, and it was just a time suck.
Mm-hmm.
We made money from it, but it was just not, real estate's such a better investment in time.
And it's so much fun.
And it's fun. It
Yeah.
can be fun, and you can lose a lot of money too. But
Sure can.
I didn't even ask my brother for money. I just said, hey, do you mind if you just take over and keep all this,
Yeah.
all these bounce houses, and it's all yours. Have fun. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck out there. It was fun. Now he's trying to get rid of it.
Oh, he's even decided to move on now.
He's building houses and stuff, and
Okay.
during the summer, it's just, he still hasn't even changed the phone number on the side of the trailer. It's still the old owner's phone number, 4 years later, and it's just a time suck, and there's a lot of repeat business and stuff. But
It's made me do a lot of, when I see a business, you walk into a coffee shop or something and you're like, oh, why don't they fix this thing over here? People would, spend more money if they would just.
yeah.
And it's really easy to criticize from the outside
Mm-hmm.
what a small business does and how it operates. But as the owner of a small business, you start to realize that things are coming at you constantly, including your own doubts.
Yeah.
And including your own doubts. Your self-motivation can fade after a while. It's hard running a small business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find myself, I try to check myself now when I see something like that and go to, in my mind, why don't they just, it's like, oh, there's the magic words.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, that bounce house business is a perfect example. I mean, there is a reason why that phone number still hasn't even changed, and why he let the website go is because it just doesn't really want the business.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some, and there are other people in the same situation where they have a side business and they'd really prefer it not to be that busy.
Yeah.
And you just never think about that. You're like, oh, why don't you have a website, you idiot? But
Right.
like, they don't want it. They're busy doing something else, or they're in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually not because they're stupid. And that's important to remember.
They typically know what the flaws are
Yeah.
and where they can make more money. They're just busy.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, what made you then transition and think real estate investing?
Well, I mean, I did what apparently millions of people are doing, which is I sold my house in California. So there's a bunch of appreciation there, right? Tax-free appreciation. And
What makes it tax free? For those that have no idea what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
okay,
I know what
so-
you're talking about, but
great. When you sell your primary residence, and when you sell your primary residence for more than you paid, if you've lived in that, the IRS federal guidelines are that if you lived in that home for at least 2 of the last 5 years before you sold, then you don't have to pay taxes on that appreciation up to a certain limit. And I believe that for married people, it's $500,000. So
That's
if your
right.
home appreciates up to $500,000, then you don't have to.
if
don't
you
even
make
have to-
500,000 in profits.
Right.
Right.
If you bought it, so you bought the home for $300,000, and 3 years later you sell it for $500,000. Well, you don't have to pay taxes on that difference, even though you made a ton of money.
Yeah. And and if you're single, it's half that, right?
I think it might be half. Yeah.
I think it's about 250. Look it up.
Yeah.
Don't trust us,
Look it up.
but it's something like that. You can make up to a $250,000 profit if you're single
Yeah.
on your primary residence.
And the
tax-free.
objective, I think the IRS does this not to make it easy to invest in your own home, but rather to make it easy to move. Like if you wanted to leave your current home to live closer to work or to change something, then you should be able to do that freely. The objective there is not to encourage like investing in your own home, which I think is a terrible idea. For my own lifestyle, my home is like the thing that is most protected because my children and my family live there. Anyways, yeah, that's what happened to me when I left California. Had a pile of cash. I'd never had that much money in my life before, and
When you bought the house, did you put much down?
I'm a veteran, so I put 0 down.
VA loan. Nice.
Yep. And when we got here to North Idaho, I put 0 down because I wanted to invest that money. I wanted to make it work for me. And looked at a lot of different things. I have a lending club account. I have tried, what's the one that I just sold my shares in one of those companies where you put money in and then they lend it out for doing flips. And I forget which one I was with, but
Like a syndication of some sort? Or
I'll think of it later, and you can put in the show notes a link to whatever
Okay.
that thing is. As you can see, I was really invested in that. Tried my hand a little bit in understanding how.
so essentially
Stocks
it
and
was
bonds
private
work.
money or private lending or hard money lending, but you weren't the one going out there and
Yeah, you put your money in, and then it's like a fund, and then they go. And I think this one you had to be accredited investor. And when I worked for Google, I was qualified as an accredited investor.
that's nice.
Yeah, I can get yourself into some trouble too with that. But I'm not an accredited investor anymore, so I don't have to distract myself with those kinds of things.
Okay.
Anyway, so and then tried my hands with like stocks and read about Jack Wol's method of investing. He's the founder of Vanguard
Mhm.
and the sort of inventor of the index fund. A lot of good information there, a lot of good strategies for retiring, but real estate is a great place to, I think, drive a better return and have a good time while doing it. A lot of opportunities to make relationships, learn how to do things that you wouldn't normally, at least I wouldn't normally know how to do
Yeah.
in my day-to-day life. So decided that real estate would be a good place to do that, and ended up starting with, and then so went to the bigger pockets kind of route.
Yeah.
Did a pile of reading, a pile of listening to podcasts, and eventually had heard the same things. There's like 100 pieces of advice you hear over and over and over again. So I eventually had to stop listening because there was nothing left for me. It felt like I needed to do something.
Yeah.
And so ended up buying an apartment building in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And that was kind of the beginning of real estate investing for me. Was a 12-unit apartment building, which is kind of a big bite.
What turned you onto that market?
The opportunity for a decent return. It felt like the Midwest was the last place in the United States to get a decent return on your down payment, essentially.
Okay.
And the numbers. I mean, I did a lot of work to kind of give myself a pro forma of what this investment would look like, and it didn't go so well.
And you bought a couple of apartments, right?
Yeah, about 3 buildings.
Bought 3 buildings, and it looked amazing on paper.
Sure did. So let me give you an example of that. The first building we bought, 12 units, all one bedroom, and they had all been rented. I think 10 of the units had been rented at $550 a month, with the landlord paying for the utilities.
Okay.
And so
it wasn't sub-metered? Or...
There were meters, there were electric meters and gas meters, but the landlord was paying the utilities.
Okay.
And so we thought, well, if we bought this building and raised the rent, well, make the tenants pay for the utilities, and then renew the leases at $500, that would be $6,000 of just pure rent revenue every month.
And how much was this building that you bought? This 12 unit?
I'd say it was $350,000.
Okay.
To give you an idea, my home in Sandpoint cost $350,000, and this whole apartment building in St. Louis cost $350,000. But these are apples and elephants. So, okay, so if we were going to raise the rents to $500 a month, and if we were going to put 12 tenants in there, that'd be $6,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
And the loan, with a 80% loan to value, which is pretty easy to come by, the loan payment on a 525 was $1,600 a month.
Okay.
So
and where did you go for the financing on this building?
Went to U.S. Bank.
U.S. Bank.
Just straight up.
Okay.
Cookie
So a
cutter
national lender.
Yeah.
And did you use somebody here locally, U.S. Bank, or just did you just call up U.S. Bank? In general.
Somehow I got started.
Or was it local to the St. Louis?
Yeah, definitely. So I forget how I came across U.S. Bank as an option, but somebody locally here in North Idaho suggested U.S. Bank for commercial loans.
Okay.
So I called U.S. Bank here in I think it was in Coeur d'Alene, and they immediately handed me off to the commercial lender in St. Louis.
Oh, okay. So you did deal with somebody local.
I did. I got handed off by somebody local to somebody in St. Louis. Yeah. It was a good process. Like, U.S. Bank is a standard bank. They want to do cookie cutter loans, and if what you're doing is cookie cutter, you get really good terms. Like 80% loan to value on a 525 loan is pretty generous, or it was at that time. And a 525 is 25-year amortization period. So you're paying principal and interest as though it'll be paid off in 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the 25 part. And the 5 part is at the end of 5 years, the loan comes due.
Yeah, you have to refinance it or sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the bank's objective there is just to get you to refinance with them in 5 years so that they're not locked into that interest rate until the end of time. They want to keep a market interest rate.
Which is very common for commercial loans. You can't get a 30-year loan fixed on a commercial building.
Yeah.
Can you?
I've not seen one.
I haven't either. Maybe you can.
I hear a lot about like 1010s, 1515s, and then like 520s and 525s, or 1025s. So those are kind of the numbers that are handed around in commercial. And in commercial, to be clear, you get a commercial loan when the building has 5 units or more.
Okay. And
you get a residential loan when the building has 4 units or fewer. So a 4-unit building is like a Fannie Mae loan, a 4-plex. And then a 5-unit building is a commercial loan, which is a totally different like department at the bank and a totally different government agency that overlooks those loans compared to residential loans.
Okay. I'm curious, what does an appraisal look like on a 12-unit apartment building? Is it expensive?
I want to say it was like $2,000.
Okay, so it's about 4 times what a house would go for.
I'm not sure how that market compares to this market, because another thing that was funny about the appraisal, closing on that property, the appraisal was the long pole. So it was like 6 weeks to get our appraisal. We had all our ducks in a row. The lending was no problem. We flew out there to look at the building, but getting on the appraiser's calendar was the hard part. And so for the following buildings, we were sure to put that on, the beginning of the list. Just get on that calendar.
Just get it ordered right away.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, let's the loan amount was how much again?
Let's see. The loan was an 80% loan to value against $350,000 purchase price. So we could get out a calculator, but I think it was like a $280,000 loan.
Okay. So you needed about 75,000 down, something like that.
And I partnered with my dad on that first one.
50-50?
50-50. We each put in 50% of the down payment plus a little bit for things that happen when you buy a property.
Okay. So and the loan payment again was $1,600?
$1,600. I think $1,680. I think $1,680 was the loan payment.
All right.
Against fully rented building should have been generating $6,000 in revenue every month.
What were the average utilities that this guy was paying, like the 12-month average?
Yeah. So what happens when you buy a recently renovated building is the seller says, I don't know because I've only been renting this out for 3 or 4 months. And the buyer says, oh, okay, that's fine. So I don't remember and it didn't matter.
Okay.
Because he hadn't had it filled long enough to show a track record for expenses, repair and maintenance type expenses. Any of that was just thumbnail sketches on both sides.
Okay. So you weren't really sure. So you close on the building and you're cash flowing at least $3,000 a month, right?
No.
I know. Sorry.
No,
that was meant to be facetious.
Yeah.
So tell me what really happened.
So we closed on the building. We hired a property manager, a 10% property manager, so we took 10% of collected rents. And right away lost half the tenants. So we were down to like 5 paying tenants within a month or two of buying the building.
Were these, before you closed on it, were these tenants all like verified real people living there? Or do you think any of the leases may have been faked?
No, I don't think the leases were faked because the tenants in this building left their stuff behind. Okay. Like left trash in there, left couches, like Tupperware with kids' toys, random stuff, just constantly. A $500 rent in St. Louis. If you want to pay less than $500 rent in St. Louis, then you're like living in your mom's living room or in a car, or you're homeless.
Okay. So they're on the verge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and like most of our tenants, I'd say more than half of our tenants didn't even have a car. Didn't really realize what I was getting into when I did this.
Did you fly out and see this building before you closed on it?
Yeah, my dad and I flew out together. Dad was a home repairman, handyman for 8 years when I was a kid, so he knows his way around.
Okay.
Does this thing is this door gonna break, or is it been hung wrong or something like that?
So after you guys both got to see it in person, did either of you guys have any doubts afterwards? Before you closed?
So we didn't openly have doubts, but I was scared the whole time because of the amount of money and walking through it was real, and I should have had more doubts because cash flow was negative almost every month.
Oh, really? Okay.
For the entire, we own that building for.
Because then you went down to 5 tenants, and that's only
$2,500
a month,
right out of
and
the gate.
then minus your management fees, minus utilities, minus your mortgage,
repairs.
It's kind of hard to profit off that.
That building had some roof problems, and the property manager, conveniently, was also a general contractor. And so when he went up and looked at the roof, he conveniently notified us that we needed a new roof, and so even some of the sheeting needed to be replaced.
Okay.
So that was like,
Was this like a flat roof or like a?
yeah, it's a flat roof with like tar paper, and
Okay.
you roll it out and then you slather on some kind of black goop.
Yeah.
So that, what was the price tag on that? I think I want to say it was like $20,000 for a brand new roof. And then 6 months later, maybe a year later, we decided that we needed to add air conditioning to the whole building. We bought the building. It had a wall or a window air conditioning unit in every unit. So there were 12 of them when we bought it. And by the time we put in what they call central air, added air conditioning to the furnaces, I think there must have been one left in the building. So they just kept walking out the door, and nobody was paying attention. Like the property manager wasn't keeping track of it.
When these tenants would turn over, they'd take their AC with them?
Apparently. Or
Okay.
maybe they would get rid of the AC when they moved in just to make a couple bucks, you know. These tenants would pay their first month's rent and a deposit of $500. I probably, in 2.5 years on that building, we probably cycled through 30 tenants, and I probably gave 2 of them their deposit back, or part of their deposit back.
Wow.
Most of the time, the way that they exited was they left. They didn't call the property manager. They didn't clean up after themselves.
You just find out when they're not paying rent?
They're not paying rent. For 2-3 months, they don't pay rent. Knock on the door a few times. Property manager technically isn't allowed to just go into a unit, but eventually push comes to shove and you find out that they've just up and left.
Gotcha.
So now you've got a clean out, which is I've paid $2,000 for a clean out. The way that the units were treated.
Mm-hmm.
These are all lessons you can learn just by listening to a pile of podcasts and reading a pile of books. I already had, but you know, and here's, so the summary of all this is, yeah, that building made like no money.
Yeah.
It lost me money, and when we sold it, like, we had to take whatever came out of that sale and just apply it to another building in St. Louis that was treading water worse. But
okay, so that wasn't even the worst one of the 3?
no. The thing that I did wrong is I bought the second building before the first one cash flowed. I didn't prove that I could play this game before I started playing it a second time. I should have got the first one floating, you know, we were expecting to each partner take $1,000 a month in just distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And instead we were each, on average, I'm thinking average month we probably put in $200 each. It was lumpy, but
Okay.
it was like a $3,000 deposit every couple of months, and then a $20,000 check to do the roof, and a $20,000 check to do the air conditionings, and
Yeah.
so that's of the dozens of lessons that I've learned in St. Louis. The biggest, the most important one is figure out how to do it right before you start doing it a second or a third time. And that would have saved me like $150,000, $200,000.
Wow.
I'd be that much richer today if I could have had that lesson and really faced it. But instead, I bought a second one.
So what did the second building look like? Was it a similar tenant base?
Yep, second building, same neighborhood, about 8 blocks away.
Okay.
On paper, it looked identical. Brick building, 12 units, 1 bedroom.
Oh, okay.
The brick there is really cool. These buildings are like 100, 110 years old, and they're made out of real brick. There's nothing facade about them. You see homes today that are built with like a brick facade on the front, and then it's like vinyl siding on the back, right? These buildings were 3 layers of brick all the way around. Really pretty. Some kind of ornate things done around the the top edge of the brick, and then these nice caps on there, and decorative corners, and once upon a time these buildings were really cool. What's left today is they're aging. They don't build buildings like that anymore, so the masons stay busy repairing but not really doing any new work in those neighborhoods. Anyways, so the building looked pretty much identical to the first one. Bought it with a different partner. Had a whole other host of issues.
Was it another similar partnership of 50-50?
Yep, we each put in 50% of the down payment anytime that we needed to do.
Was this another traditional loan, or like an 80-20 loan?
Same
US
lender,
bank?
same U.S. bank lender, 80-20, right? Yeah, 80% loan to value. I think we closed that one at $360 with $10,000 like credit at closing because we found some issues.
Oh, okay. So it was pretty much the same price too.
Yep.
Now, was this one full of tenants?
Yeah, this one was not a renovation, so it was already, I think there was like 11 of 12 units were rented when we bought it.
Oh, okay. Did a lot of these tenants leave as well when you closed on it?
When we closed on this one, we were probably down to 7 paying tenants after a month or two instead of 5 on the first one. So yeah, another mass exodus. Tenants who live on the edge tend to get nervous when there's a change of demand. Yeah. For example, in the first one, those tenants were paying cash for the most part, and their utilities were covered, and that meant like the government didn't have like a name with that address.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to get any bills in their name, and so there were fewer avenues of attack if you were somebody who was on heat maps.
Okay.
Or if maybe your citizenship, your presence in the United States is questionable. You really want to keep a low profile. So rather than get to know the new people, those kind of people just pop smoke and leave.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this building was very similar profile. The big expenses there turned out to be on the whole the same thing. People don't pay their rent. You have to pay for eviction. You have to pay for cleanouts. Things are breaking constantly because they weren't repaired properly the last time that they were fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Roof leaks constantly.
So the roof leaked on this one too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you just plan on it on these buildings.
Okay.
Like you see these buildings, they have like 10, 12 layers of more tar paper and more. They use different types of chemicals to dope up the roofs, and if you don't use the right chemicals on the layer on the previous layer, then these things don't stick together properly, these kind of things. So all the same long list of unending expenses. And then these ones already had central air. The roof was in good enough condition to just patch it and keep going. The big surprise on this one, I was in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico with my wife on like the very first vacation that we had ever taken since having kids, just me and her.
Yeah.
Literally sitting in a beautiful restaurant, like under an umbrella, soaking it in, totally relaxed, get a call from my property manager. Did you pay the water bill?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I paid the water bill. Of course, that's like, I have to pay the water bill. There's one water main.
Yeah.
That's not sub-metered. Massive 2-inch water main. Of course I'm paying that bill. Well, they've turned off her water.
Okay.
So that was a 7-month ordeal. And
the water was off for 7 months?
water was off for about 24 hours. But 7 months later, we finally finished fixing the problem that was the root cause there. It cost us about $15,000. This is a fun story.
Let's hear it. You look like you almost don't want to tell it and relive it. But.
I want to make sure I tell it in order and everything. So, turns out that there's a leak under the street where the city's main tees off to our building.
Mm-hmm.
And the leak is in the part of the tee, the part of that relationship that we are responsible for, not the city.
Okay.
That leak had existed for probably a year before we even bought the building. And the city had contacted the previous owner on several occasions to get them to fix the problem, fix the leak under the street. And they'd even sent a threatening letter saying, we're going to turn off the water in 14 days if you don't open a permit to repair this water main.
So this seller knew about this,
Oh, yeah.
and they didn't disclose it when they sold you the building.
Did not disclose it.
That's a no-no.
That, so...
Legally speaking.
Legally speaking, ethically speaking, morally speaking, it's a
Yeah.
no-no. So, about 6 months after we bought it, the city wasn't bright enough to notice that the property had changed hands, and they were still sending correspondence to the old. I'm paying the bill,
Yeah.
but the old owner is still getting correspondence about this problem, apparently.
So is it metered? Is it like higher than it should be? Or is it not metered?
That one was weird. I never got to the bottom of it because the water bill on that building would be like $400 one month and $800 the next month and then $200 the next month. I couldn't figure out, and the sewer bill was supposed to
Okay.
follow,
Yeah.
but the water bill was actually, that was it. The water bill was paid every 3 months, and the sewer bill ran off the same meter, but it was paid monthly. And I could never get the two to align. I
Okay.
never got to the bus. But I think what happened was 3 weeks before I went to Cabo San Lucas on vacation, I called the city, the water department, and said, hey, I'd just like to understand my bill, and I wonder if there's something wrong with the meter reader, or maybe there's some leak that you can help me to resolve. What's the normal procedure here when you see numbers that go up and down like this? And they followed up and said, well, we sent the meter reader out there again to make sure and know that the numbers are being recorded properly. And then I got a letter in the mail from the city a couple of days later saying, hey, there's a leak under the street. It's your problem. We're going to shut the water off in 14 days. And I called my property manager and I said, can you work on this?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, they're mistaken. That's another building. That's across the street. And I said, oh, okay, cool.
Okay.
So I called the city. I think I waited on hold and then left a message or something like that, and then left it at that. Well, 14 days later, I'm in Cabo San Lucas, and just as promised, they shut off the water. And it turned out that the water main didn't go down the center of the street. It went down kind of the other side of the street-ish, and then across to our building. And it was our fault. It was our building's problem.
Okay.
So
And this is your first day on vacation?
yeah, it was like the second day on vacation.
Oh, second day.
Yeah.
Okay.
So property manager hires a plumber who does the right thing and turns on the water without permission from the city so that the tenants have water, and then opens a permit to repair, and then the city comes out and officially turns the water back on, and plumber starts working on the repair, and he estimated, I think, $10,000 to do the whole thing. So it's going to be like 2-inch copper, a new tee off the city's main. That's called a tap.
Yeah.
It's like a main that's pressurized, and then while it's pressurized and live, they sink a new tee into that thing and then give you a valve, and then you have to set a new meter inside of the building, and so the whole job is supposed to cost about $10,000 and take like a month.
Mm-hmm.
So the plumber gets started, and I'm getting some photographs of like an open pit in front of the building. Great, things are underway. And then the plumber just disappears, and property manager's having a hard time managing the situation.
While the street's dug up?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like there's like tape saying caution,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and it's kind of starting to deteriorate, and the rain comes and goes, and
And he said the job was going to take almost a month?
it's supposed to take like a month to finish.
Wow.
And so 3 months
Just
later,
to fix a valve, or just to install a T-valve?
to replace the
That's
water
right.
main from the city to like 20 feet.
Oh, okay.
So the property manager's having a hard time managing this plumber.
Mm-hmm.
He's not answering anymore. He's been given some, an extension on his money. He's been given some money up front to get going, to pay for materials and things, but he's not answering anymore.
Okay.
I went to St. Louis.
He got paid enough money, so he was gone. He didn't want to do the rest of the job.
Who knows?
I've had that happen.
People don't make sense. But, like, he's a licensed plumber. The permit's got his name on it,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yeah. So, probably 4 months into this project, 5 months, must have been 5 months into the project, I had a reason to go to St. Louis for regular work. There's a conference in St. Louis that I went to, and so I was there, rented a car, and I stopped by the building to see how's it going, and I got the plumber's number myself from the property manager. She's not managing the situation anymore. Like, she hasn't found a new plumber. She hasn't fixed the relationship with the old plumber. She isn't she isn't proposing solutions to the problem.
Right.
And so I ended up just taking the problem in my own hands.
Mm-hmm.
And
She's not being a property manager.
No, she's not managing anything. It's very frustrating. So, so I get a hold of the plumber finally, and just like the day before I go to St. Louis, and arrange a meeting with him on site. And follow up with him like 2-3 times on my way there to make sure that he's going to be there, because I'm only going to be in town for like 3 days.
Yeah.
So he meets me on site. He meets me there. And he has some sob story, and his life is hard, and okay, I need you to finish this job. Well, I'm going to need some more money. Fine, whatever you need, but it's going to cost me more money to find a new plumber to come and clean up your mess than it is for you to trust your own work that you've done so far and tie this up. So I think we ended up paying him like an extra $3,000. Plus there were
On top of what he quoted you?
On top of what he quoted us, and on top of extras that came from the city, and all in, we were about $14,000-$15,000 by the end. But he finished the work, and I'm dealing with him directly. So I fly home to Idaho, and I'm calling him almost every day, and I'm sending money to him directly through like Western Union as he completes little milestones along the way.
No.
He finishes the whole job, gets the meter set by the city, and the permit was open. The permit had an expiration of 6 months.
Yeah.
And he finishes like at 6 months and a day. So he needs to open a new permit, get it inspected, and close it. New permit's going to cost like $400. And I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
Open the permit. Oh, well, my insurance, the plumber tells me my insurance, haven't been able to pay it. And so the city has restricted my license, and so I can't open a permit. But I need that last. I think I owed him like $1,000 or $1,500 at the end.
Yeah.
This final milestone had a final check associated with it, and I said, "You're not getting any of your money until you solve this problem." So he found this old like 70-year-old plumber who came in, looked at the work that was done with his flashlight, and said, "Yeah, I'll do this for you." And so we had this 7-year-old plumber. We paid this guy like $300 just to open a permit, walk in with the inspector, and close that permit so that we could eventually sell the building. And
Yeah.
This wasn't like a loose end. At least in St. Louis, you can look on their website. You can look and see all the permits that have been open on a property, and then like were they closed.
Yeah.
So you can see unclosed permits, and anybody who's doing due diligence on buying that building later would see an open permit that was never closed and say, "Oh, what happened here?"
Yeah.
So I managed that relationship directly, and I got us to a win. And my property manager didn't stand up to the task, and my partner also didn't do anything to help out. He was totally useless. He whined the whole time.
Did he still pay for half of everything?
Yeah.
As agreed? Okay.
To the bitter end, he demanded that any time that he put money in, I put money in, equal amount.
Yeah.
A fun thing that happened near the end, though, is I started going through what the city was telling me, and I started calling the city and just talking to instead of talking to the city supervisors who were mad at me because I owned the building as if I had owned it when I had lied to them in the past,
Yeah.
as if I were the old owner. Those guys were total jerks, very unhelpful, very dogmatic. But the people that you call and get on the phone, just the customer service people, were helpful enough that through a phone call at a time, I managed to get copies of the correspondence that they had sent to the previous owner and build a timeline that demonstrated that those guys were cheaters and liars and stealers. And so then I added to that timeline my own timeline and made copies of the estimate from our plumber and made copies of what things had cost so far in the job. It wasn't done yet, but I built this whole probably 14 or 15 pages of here's evidence to show that the seller had acted dishonestly.
Yeah.
And then
Misrepresented the property.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lied. And then I wrote a letter to the seller, the guy who sold it to me, and I CC'd his agent and his broker and my agent, who's also a broker, and sent registered mail to him, to the seller, and to the seller's agent, with my 3-page letter outlining what I wanted and all the documentation I'd built, and I asked for $10,000 to cover what had happened.
That's all you asked for, even though it cost you more?
By the end, it cost more. I didn't know that at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I asked for $10,000, and right away the response was an email from his lawyer saying, "You'll go through me now." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't have a lawyer yet.
Yeah.
And a week later, the lawyer came back and said, "Okay, we'd like to just offer you a $5,500 check right now." And I said,
because they knew you had them by the balls.
"Yeah." I said, "Okay."
Oh, and you agreed?
I agreed to it.
Well, that was kind of you.
So, yeah. My partner, again, being so unhelpful, and he, as I told him what I was working on and the hours that I was spending on putting this documentation together, he poo-pooed me the whole time. He discouraged me from doing it. He's like, "You're not going to get anything out of him." And I said, I can go to small claims.
You had solid evidence.
I had solid evidence. I had plenty of...
And when you're dealing with brokers...
right.
You had that evidence.
I researched,
it's real easy.
I researched how
it's not easy, but you can.
Yes.
People don't dismiss that kind of stuff.
And I researched how to file a complaint with the State of Missouri Brokers Association or whatever. Mm-hmm. Made sure that there was enough people were neck on the line here that there was some teeth to what I was doing. But my partner, who's supposed to be like my advocate, my partner in this whole thing, was very dismissive of it, of my effort. And again, he just wanted to complain. He just wanted to tell me why this was stupid. So when this message from the lawyer came saying, "How about I just write you a check for $5,500?" I said yes, because I felt like it was a huge win. And then my partner told me that I should have held out for more.
Not good job. Hey, thanks so much for helping us.
Not even a little.
Get a little.
So
where'd you meet this guy? Or do you know?
California.
Okay.
He sells. What does he sell? Financial products for Wells Fargo. So
okay.
People with large net worth go to him, and he invests their money in, very conservative investments, mostly index funds with different names stamped on them.
Okay.
Makes too much money doing too little, kind of a thing. So about 15 months after that, I sold him my share of the building for $1. And I gave a talk on that at the RIA meeting up in Sandpoint back in August that you might remember.
I remember it.
We tried to sell the building for 6 months. We had an agreement with an agent to list the building, and I think we listed it like $375 because the market was up, and brought the listing all the way down to like $350, and had offers at we had an offer for like $340 that we accepted, and then it fell through, and then an offer for like 330, I want to say, and they did their due diligence and said we need to reduce our agreed upon price to like 300, and I was like, yeah, you can have it, take it. And my partner didn't want to do that. He wanted to hang on to it and get more money out of it. So I sold my 50% of the LLC to him for $1. And that turns out to be really easy. You can sell your half of an LLC with 2 signatures.
Yeah, you can get it done in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Through email.
Yeah. And that's what I did. And it was such a relief. It was a very difficult decision to make. But going into that decision, I knew logically that it was the right thing to do, the right move, because there was no equity in it.
Yeah.
And so it was a liability I could safely get rid of and not pay to get rid of.
Would have probably saved you some aging time.
Yeah. So I sold. So like in the week leading up to my decision to, okay, yes, I'm going to sell this, my ownership for $1. It was logically the right decision, but emotionally it was very hard for me to follow through with it. After I signed the documents and put them in the mail, it was probably 2 days later that I felt the emotional like relief and confirmation that like, good decision, that liability is gone.
Yeah.
And I'm getting texts from him now about the next phase of problems that he's facing and the $10,000 check he has to write for, a unit that was just trashed and had been sitting vacant for far too long, and so the roof had leaked for far too long. And
so you've been out of this for how long now? A year and a half?
that was building number 2. I've been out of that one since August.
Since August, okay.
Yeah.
And he's still complaining to you?
It's become less and less. Like, I think he thinks we're friends, and I'm like,
Okay.
it's good information because I still own one building in St. Louis, so it's good to know what's going on there. But I'd never do business with him again,
And so how much money do you think you lost on that one?
$46,000.
$46,000
Yeah.
on just that building.
Yeah,
And how much of your time do you think it took you?
Oh, jeez.
How much, if you had to guess, how many hours?
1,000 hours that I spent on
1,000.
that building. Yeah.
1,000 hours
of spare time on Sundays and Saturdays, and middle of the day taking 2 or 3 hours off work so that I can chase things down. I mean, endless, and the emotional toll that it took, and I've been to the bottom. I've been to the bottom of anxiety and depression through this. It really tore me up. That building and the other 2 together, back in about June of 2019, I had to go to St. Louis to manage building number 3, which is we're doing a renovation. And I got to the point where I was shaking constantly. I was breathing, my breathing was shallow. I sat on the back porch of one of the units and I just sobbed for an hour one night and didn't feel the catharsis afterwards that you're supposed to feel when you cry that hard. Just felt pain in my abdominal muscles from having sobbed that long. Took me months to get out of that. So totally worth it to lose $46,000.
Got a huge education.
Massive education, yeah. And let me illustrate the way that I calculate $46,000 to be clear. So I think the down payment on that one was like $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I paid $35,000 and my partner paid $35,000. And in the accounting, we kept track of the accounting in QuickBooks, and so we each had like an equity account that showed $35,000 right out of the gate.
Yep.
Seller gave us $10,000 at closing, so that was our checking account balance to begin with. And then over time, anytime that I put money in to the business, I increased my equity account by that much. And then anytime that we took a distribution, we did take a distribution, I think, once early on, just because we thought, oh, there's money in we have like $15,000 in the account at the moment.
Yep.
And so we each took like a $3,000 distribution, and it wasn't a distribution though; it just came out of our equity accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you keep track, is with these what I call equity account. So my partner's equity account, my equity account, we're always the same. We're always equivalent to the penny. And so by the time I got rid of my part of the business, my equity account balance was $46,000. My partner's was $46,000. And I sold him my share of the business for $1, and so my equity account was set to 0, and his equity account stayed at 46, and I get to take a $46,000 loss on my taxes.
Okay.
So what that means is if I make $100,000 this year, then I'm being very simple here. A CPA is going to tell you that it has to dribble out over a few years and all that kind of thing. But basically, if I make $100,000 this year and pay taxes against that, instead I get to pay taxes against $100,000 minus 46, so $54,000.
Right.
So that's the loss that I get to take, and that's, the silver lining, that and the education, which is worth more than anything else.
Gotcha. So you have one more building down there, and is it scale of 1 to 10? How's that doing?
We're at like a 7 right now.
Okay. So that one's not. Is that the first one or the third one?
So building 1 I told you about, building 2 I told you about, building 1 I bought with my dad, and we sold that one, I want to say in October, and I lost about $65,000 on that one.
Jesus.
Yeah. Building 2, I lost $46,000 on back in August. And then building 3, my partner on that one is also my dad.
Okay.
Building 3 is a renovation. So we bought that one for what did we pay for that one? I think we paid like $280. Totally vacant. 14 units. 2 of them were 2 bedrooms, and the rest were 1 bedroom. So our property manager at the time, and again, this is within the window of I still haven't figured out how to cash flow the first 2. I still don't know how to play the game yet, and I've decided to pull the trigger on a third one. My property manager, who seemed really great at the time, but still hadn't turned over a cash flowing property for us, she suggested that we buy this building and that we have her renovate it, have her be the general. Okay. So she estimated that the renovation would cost something like $80,000, so $280,000.
Did all the units need work?
All of them needed work, yeah.
14 units?
Yeah.
That seems low.
In retrospect, it seemed low to me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. I mean, it just seems low because I just spent $118,000 renovating one house. But
yeah, and we didn't
different area, different market.
I bought number 2 and 3 sight unseen. Mm-hmm. I just trusted the people on the ground that you pay for an inspection, you trust your general contractor, your property manager to tell you the truth and to understand things better than you. Like in my perspective, I lean on those people quite a lot. They look at a building and see things that I don't see, so there's no sense to me even being present to do an inspection when professionals can do that for me, right? So bought for $280. Renovation was supposed to cost about $80,000. So we said, well, even if it cost us double that, we'd still be ahead in terms of what the value of the property would be when it's done.
Okay.
So
did you get a similar loan again?
No, that one we bought with cash.
Okay.
And then my dad wanted to fund the renovation.
Was this still some of the cash that you had from the sale of your California house?
Yeah, it was the rest of it.
Okay.
So I didn't, and my partner knew that up front, and so we each put in half of the down payment or half of the purchase price, which for me was $138,000.
Okay.
And then after that, he was going to pay for the renovation, and we agreed that was the agreement, and we agreed to keep track of things as I described before, equity accounts, but instead of being perfectly even, my partner's account would grow a lot faster, and then he would just get paid back that whenever we decided to get financing or sell or whatever.
Okay. Different partner? Or no, this is your dad.
This is my dad again.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Same as building number 1. So we bought that one. Our property manager started doing the renovation, and right out of the gate, things were slow. She estimated 6 weeks to renovate the first unit, and it was more like 4 or 5 months before she had that one like actually rented.
Okay.
About a year in, we stopped the bleeding. We'd spent about $120,000, and she still had, I think she had 4 units rented at that point. She'd blown $120,000. She'd promised 80 to do 14 units.
And she got 4 units done?
Yeah.
Okay. That's quite different.
Quite.
Was she an experienced contractor?
Yeah, she's...
Or an experienced con artist?
I think both.
Okay.
I think in this particular part of St. Louis, there's a lot of people who are both. They're good at playing the game. And so she does ostensibly, she does a lot of her own investing. She does a lot of her own flipping. And so she knows how to slap together a renovation so that it will sell. She knows how to do just enough so that it will rent. She knows that tenants are going to abuse the building, so you need to invest, be smart about where you put your money.
Yeah. But 120 something for 4 units when she estimated 80,000 for 14.
Yeah.
That just seems like, did something way out of her control happen, or?
She's just very disorganized.
Oh man.
So.
And it took a year
to get, yeah.
Dude, you've been beat up.
Yeah. It was about a year. So, okay. Let's go to the timeline. We bought that building, I want to say, in about February of 2018. And she was supposed to start the renovation right away. And she's charging us like her costs plus I think her fee was like $2,000 a month to run the renovation. Things are never progressed as quickly as we wanted. And late summer of that year, my dad, my partner, lost his job. He's also a software engineer. Things changed with his work situation.
Wow.
And he was let go.
Okay.
So he kind of looked around, looked at what was happening in St. Louis, and we started talking about, well, maybe, Dad, you should go to St. Louis and like run this project yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say it was like November when we finally made the decision that, yeah, Dad's packing up his tools and driving to St. Louis, Missouri, and he lives in Logan, Utah, North Utah. So I think it was about November that he packed up his truck and drove across to St. Louis. Lived in an Airbnb for a bit and picked up the phone and started calling whoever he could find to come out and do the work.
Okay, so he's going to act as a general contractor and sub out a lot and just manage the project?
Yeah.
Okay.
He can swing a hammer for sure.
Yeah.
But the objective was to get people working.
Yeah, because
so
that could take a decade to do all that on your own.
Yeah. And that turned out to be hard to find decent work, hard to find decent workers, hard to find decent subs in December who were willing to work in a building that didn't have heat.
Oh, wow. Okay, no heat.
Yeah. Hard to figure out how to get street smart about how to find subs that are not going to charge you too much but are also going to do good work. So that was, and it was harder than I realized. But the work that he was doing to find people to just win the day each day was harder than I realized. And
did he have any experience in construction?
Yeah.
Prior to this?
He'd been a handyman for 8 years.
Oh, okay. So not totally new to him.
No, he's got a beautiful barn that the inside is a shop and a garage and a storage and an office and an apartment that he's done all the inside work. He ordered the shell and did kind of a barn dominium situation.
Okay. So it wasn't a lack of skills. It's just this area is really tough to get anything done if you don't have solid roots.
If you don't have a book of contacts, which is, I think, not an uncommon situation. Like right now in North Idaho, if you want to build a house, if you're a builder, it's hard to find good subs. If you're if you're somebody who wants to have a home built, it's hard to find a good builder who has time in his schedule in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So that part's kind of universal, but so he's struggling with that, and I think he was doing like 3 weeks in St. Louis and then a week home. He was flying back and forth, and so we're hemorrhaging money and the flights and the Airbnb costs, and he finally gets one unit to the point where he can live in it. So there we're saving a pile of money every month just on the Airbnb.
Okay.
And he gets himself to a point where he's got 3 or 4 subs that are doing good enough work, and he finds a new job. At the same time that he's doing this renovation, he's also looking for work as a software engineer.
Okay.
So he
doing it remotely, or does he have to be on site somewhere?
Let's see. The new job is he needs to be on site.
Okay.
And it's in Utah. So the new employer knows that he's got this thing that he's trying to tie up, and they're going to be flexible with hours and a little bit of remote work and stuff like that. But he and I agreed that I should start putting in time as well in St. Louis now that we both have jobs.
Yeah.
So we thought a good arrangement would be I go to St. Louis for a week, and then he goes to St. Louis for a week. Or I go to St. Louis for a week, and then nobody's there, but we manage the subs remotely, and then he goes to St. Louis for a week, and then a week of remote, and then a week of me, something like that. So we tried that for a little while, and I spent a total of 2 weeks in St. Louis. So I'm on my laptop working,
Yeah.
and also standing up, walking around, looking, making calls, trying to unblock people. And that was the second week that I went to St. Louis was the first week of June, and that was when I hit rock bottom in my sort of sense of despair and anxiety.
Yeah.
I could see that we were getting nowhere fast, and I could see that I had no idea what I was doing. I hired an electrician to replace a weatherhead that the power company or that the city wanted replaced so that we could turn on some more units. That guy didn't open a permit, but the power company disconnected the weatherhead for him, and because he didn't open a permit, we couldn't get the weatherhead reconnected, and the city was mad at me and that was just one problem.
Yeah.
And then our subs are costing a lot of money, and people don't show up. Like somebody says, like your carpenter says he'll show up, he'll be here tomorrow at 6 a.m. Okay, I'll be here tomorrow at 6 a.m. too because I'm staying in one of these units. I wake up at 5:30, I wait and I wait and I wait, and he never shows up. Like people just don't show up 70% of the time.
Yeah.
And you're giving me the like
Yeah.
And now
I flipped houses.
and now
I think I'm
know.
done flipping houses.
Yeah.
I just closed on one today that I've been
On a new
working on
flip.
since July.
Oh, a flip that you're selling.
Yep. Selling a flip. We started it July 1st. We had a plan to get it on the market within 2 months, but before the end of the summer. It never hit the market. But I sold it. We just finished a renovation last week, and it's later February right now for
Yeah.
those listening.
Yeah.
It is not summertime.
Back
It
up
is the
February.
next year, and it is hard to flip houses even when you're local, even when you have a lot of contacts. I have a lot of contacts. People sometimes just don't show up. People make mistakes. They say they pulled the permits, but they didn't. Or they'll continue work without getting proper inspections when permits are open, and then they have to lift up that work that was already done. So you have to pay people to do things 2-3 times just to go through the permitting process.
All of those things.
You have to replace sidewalks when you didn't plan to because the city wants you to. There's an endless amount of problems that could come up when you are flipping houses and inexperienced. Even when you're experienced. I mean, I feel like I'm 5 years in. I've done a couple dozen flips, and that I still run into problems all the time, and I'm going to switch to just new construction for a little bit and see how I like that. Anyway, go ahead.
So the things that you're describing are things that you hear about at the RIA meetings, and you read about in the books, and you hear about in the podcasts, and you talk to other people who've done it. And for me, when I was there facing the problems, I saw that I didn't have what it took. I saw that I was not up to this challenge. I was not thriving. And it hurt my ego, and it hurt my confidence, and it hurt I felt like I had really done something stupid. Like I really beat myself up quite a lot. And I appreciate so much more now the general contractors and subcontractors who have a license and have insurance and put their business before their trade, and show up when they say they're going to show up, and call me when they're not going to show up and tell me why, and I, like, they're a team player, you know?
Yeah, and they quote a proper amount
Yeah.
to cover the whole job,
Yeah.
and not just enough to get the job and then screw you over later.
and communicate with you about changes as they arise instead of just, oh, that's what happens. So the real estate work that I'm doing up here in North Idaho now, my partner is a general contractor. He's built a lot of custom homes. He's done a lot of renovations. He's done a wide spectrum of types of work in the work of real estate. And I lean on him quite a lot. And while I was in St. Louis going through this in June, I called him, and I had a cry with him on the phone. And he said, you know, here's what you got. It was Monday.
Yeah.
This one particular phone call was Monday morning. It was like 9 o'clock, and I should have had 4 subs on site. And nobody was showing up. Nobody was answering texts or calls. And so I called Josh, my partner.
4 separate subs.
Yeah.
We're supposed to show and nobody shows.
Not related, not coming together. Like 4 dudes and 4 trucks were supposed to be there.
And you're flying out from Idaho to St. Louis to try to run this job, and just nobody's showing up.
Yeah. Like, why would I even show up myself? Why would I fly?
Yeah.
So I called Josh about 9 o'clock in the morning. Josh is my partner in Idaho on other projects, and told him what was going on. Told him I was feeling emotionally fragile, and he said, you know, I've been there. And that meant so much, just to hear that like, I've been there. And then he said, here's what you got to do. You're going to make a list of people to call, and you're going to call every person on that list. And I told him all the problems that were going on, and he said, okay, each one of those people that you just mentioned, you're going to call each one of them. And then you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to call some more people, whoever it is that can help you. It doesn't matter. Like, if you get on Craigslist, if you get on, just do some Google searches for electrician, plumber, carpenter, whatever it is, you're going to pick up the phone and just start calling. And he says, I promise you in 2 hours you'll feel better. And 2 hours later, I did feel better. I had a couple of guys on site that were just hours late is all.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of new contacts that I had drummed up just by making the calls. And then I think it was on Wednesday that week that I had my real long sob, when 4 or 5 of those problems that we've glossed over, the types of problems we've glossed over here, had really bubbled to the surface. And it was probably 10 o'clock at night, and I sat on the back step of the unit that I was staying in and just cried my heart out. And then that was Wednesday night. Thursday and Friday, I was like, every 15 to 30 minutes, I would want to sob. I just needed to, like, let out a shudder of emotion of pain. Saturday morning, I woke up at, I think, 4 o'clock in the morning to get the taxi, to get to the airport, to get through security, to get to the 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock flight on time. And it was all I could do to just hold it in while I was sitting in the taxi, while I was waiting for the plane to board, while I was sitting next to some stranger on the airplane. You know, I had a window seat. I remember having the window seat because I looked out the window and I pretended like I was leaning forward and just looking out the window while I cried openly. And then did some of this and like sat back and closed my eyes and tried to sleep. And my wife picked me up at the airport in Spokane. And we were in the van for about 20 minutes, and that was when I finally could just let it all go. And for about 3 months, it was hard for me to function. The anxiety, the worry. Anxiety, I think, is just a fancy word for worry. The worry just pushed down on my chest for 23 hours a day. And
did you have nightmares of the renovation process?
Yeah, I think I had some bad dreams. It was more of just like not sleeping though.
Okay.
It was like put the kids in bed 8:39, and then try to numb my brain with Netflix for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then wake up at 5:30 because there was some sound, and now I can't go back to sleep because all I'm thinking about is that I'm worried. I talked to a lot of people during that time. I started doing some reading. I started thinking about my mental health, and kept going to the RIA meetings. I shared openly what happened to building number 2 for an hour and a half in August at the RIA meeting. And I've tried to be like warm and sharing at the RIA meetings and with lunches that I have with people as a way of connecting with people. And it's been great. It's been awesome. I can honestly look back now today and say I'm glad that I've gone through that. It hasn't even been a year since I hit bottom.
Yeah.
My real estate agent in Sandpoint had his bottom period, and he and I had lunch one day after the June incident. Let's call it the June incident.
Yep.
He and I had lunch one day, and I told him what was going on, and he shared with me what his bottoming out experience was like back in 2008, and how it was a couple of years for him to get back on the horse. And he said that for his whole family, that was like the most important experience of their life so far. He's like, there's salvation, and then there's 2008. Those are the most important things in our family, and it's brought them together, and it's, he and his wife are much closer than me and my wife are much closer than we were. I found out who some real true friends are, and so it's totally worth it. You have to be a newbie for at least a little while.
Yeah.
And that means you're going to make mistakes and get beat up a little bit, and you have to. If you don't, then you're just chicken.
Well,
you can learn from it,
if you're always winning, you're not learning anything.
Yeah.
And eventually you're gonna.
And if you're not learning, you're always losing, right?
Well, if you're not learning, you're always losing.
Yeah. If you don't learn from your mistakes, then you're going to keep on losing.
Oh, of course.
If you don't try, you're not going to win. But if you try, you're going to fail. But if you keep trying and you keep learning from your failures, you're going to win more and more, right?
You got to change up your strategy a little bit.
Yeah.
When things aren't going right.
Yeah.
Have you done that yet?
Yeah. Yeah. that one lesson is the most important one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to do something a second time before you've. Don't do something. Don't do two things at once. When you don't let me try to say this right. How did I say it before? Take a strategy. Take a strategy. The strategy
Mm-hmm.
of buying an apartment building in St. Louis. Don't buy the second apartment building until you've made the first one a success.
Yeah.
And then you're going to save yourself like time, effort, and energy, and you're going to learn as many lessons along the way, and win more and lose less.
Yeah. So I would imagine, since we're only about 7 months in, since June, 7 or 8 months, are you still doing renovations on that building?
Yeah. So we've got
How many units do you have?
10
done?
units are done or almost done.
Okay.
So we should have.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. I don't know how much money we're in right now. I haven't been keeping track lately.
I've gotten into that habit where you're just so far over budget,
Yeah.
you just stop keeping track.
We just need to get to the end.
That happened. I think maybe I shared a presentation on that house that I worked on. I converted from a single family to 4
Yes.
units, and I had a budget of $40,000 to do the renovation.
Yeah, and where did you land on that?
$150,000
Wow.
is what I ended up spending.
But the ARV was more than you anticipated, so it's not quite a wash. It's not.
It was a very stressful year,
Yeah.
and I did have a bit of a breakdown because I didn't anticipate spending another $90,000 of my own cash,
Yes.
and I didn't have it. I did over time, but barely.
Yes.
And I have a lot of overhead. I have employees, and there was one week in last April where I needed about $1,500 to make payroll and all this stuff, and I was nervous. I never usually have less than 10,000 in my account since I first started investing, and I had to go to my bank and get just a small loan for $2,000, and they gave it to me, but
That's
I
stressful.
had a meltdown too, privately in my car. Things were just going wrong for months, and they never stopped going wrong until I finished that project, and I did it right. Had to do it a couple of times with many different contractors.
Yeah.
I probably went through, there were probably 20 different people in that house on and off, and I had to fire a few. And but when it was finally done, I think the market helped quite a bit with appreciation. Also, I made certain decisions throughout the process. Okay, well, since we're going over, let's just do everything right, and let's just redo it all, and let's just go high end. We'll get more rents this way. And I got real lucky. When I refinanced, I got all my cash back plus another $1,000 by coincidence. I just happened to get $91,000 in my cash out refi, and I had put
Wow.
$90,000 of my own cash into it over time.
So you chose to keep that one.
Oh yeah, it was always a plan to keep it, to do
Yeah.
the BRRRR strategy.
Yeah.
It was not the plan for it to go 8 months overdue or 8 months over and $110,000 over budget.
Yeah.
That was not in the plan.
Yeah.
It was extremely stressful. So I can appreciate where you're going through.
I don't think we talk about this enough.
No, it's stressful, but I would imagine when you have your apartment all rented out, you're gonna feel differently about it.
Yeah, we're gonna sell that one.
You're gonna sell it? Okay.
Yeah, and we won't. No, I'm not going to get any of my money back.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be another.
Are you gonna stick to local deals now?
Yeah. Let's see. So this partner I mentioned up in Sandpoint,
Mm-hmm.
his name is Josh, and he and I met about 2 years ago. We met at a Cub Scout Pinewood Derby.
Okay.
And I said, hey, my name's Jacob. Oh, I'm Josh. What do you do, Josh? He says, adult films. Straight face. And he's a big guy, like
Yeah.
300 pounds, massive beard, long hair. And immediately I'm thinking, not an actor, he must be a producer, director.
Gotta be a producer. Yeah.
And I laughed right away. And we've been friends ever since.
So he was being facetious?
He doesn't do adult film. Yeah.
Okay.
Turns out. So he mentioned that he builds homes. I mentioned, I do I dabble in real estate. And so we got to know each other over time. We did a flip. Just a real simple flip. We bought a little house on 18 acres up in Selly Valley, which is the area in Bonner County north of Sandpoint.
Okay.
Bought a little house there. It was a flip, but it was there was hardly any hammer swinging. It was mostly clean out the stuff, the tons of stuff like you do.
Yep.
Run a vacuum through it, and then sell it to whoever wants it, basically for a good price for them too. That was a fun flip because it came with like a Ford tractor and I think it's an F-250 with like a plow on it and a bunch of other stuff. And our agreement was that I'd put in the money, I'd put up the money to buy the place. Josh would do most of the work, all the work, and we'd split the profit, but he would get what he calls the spoils of war. So he got the F-250 pickup. He sold the tractor. I think he sold the tractor for like $8,000 or $10,000.
Uh-huh.
And we sold the whole thing, and I think we each made like $6,000 in the end. So it was positive return. It was my first successful real estate venture.
And where'd you find that deal? Was it on the MLS or was it off market?
He found it through his agent. I want to say, so the agent, he bought a property.
Now, is this guy also an agent or no?
No.
Okay, sorry.
So Josh had bought a property next door to this one, just a piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
And his agent that helped him buy that piece of land caught wind of this other one coming up. And so I think it was off MLS through his agent. And so we decided to buy it, did the flip, sold it. That was our first deal together. Since then, we've done land. And land is fun.
Yeah.
And it's a niche that not very many people are into because it seems scary and hard. It is hard and it's a little bit scary, and you have to have people that know what they're doing, but it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
So we bought a 40-acre piece of land just north of Sandpoint, 2 miles north of Sandpoint. We subdivided that into 8 5-acre lots.
Okay.
We closed on that one in, I want to say, November of 2018.
How long did it take to do the subdividing process? If you had to guess.
Let's see. About 6 or 8 weeks.
Oh, that's not bad.
Nope, hold on. 4 months.
Okay. That sounds more realistic. Sorry.
Yeah. You could do it in 6 or 8 weeks if you had everything lined up and your surveyor was ready to go. But
okay.
You got to get on people's calendars and things like that. So had a big piece of wetland in the middle. We mitigated that concern. We've sold 3 of the 8 lots, and looks like we've got a contract for 1 more and somebody else that seems to be close. So without counting chickens before they're hatched, we've sold 3.
Okay.
And there's a lot of activity right now in the middle of February, and we've got a big old pond that is frozen hard on half the lots right now.
Okay.
Which is a problem.
Yeah.
But the problem is just a drainage ditch that is frozen solid right now, and once things thaw, we'll be able to clean it out. So it's like, it looks like there's a big water problem, but it's easy to fix.
Did you have to put in a road?
Yeah, we put in a road, we put in electricity, we put in...
is it a dirt road or is it paved?
Gravel road.
Gravel? Okay.
Lots of little details we could talk about there. Anyways, my point before, though, is
okay.
Even though we're in the dead of winter and it's covered in ice, and most people should be scared off from this property until we finish cleaning up the last issue with water, there's still activity on it. So we feel like it's a pretty good project. Things are moving along quite well. The things we did to develop this property, besides just splitting it into lots, we brought in electricity. we brought in phone.
Okay.
We put in a road where there was kind of a road before, and there was also an area that had no road before. So about a mile of road total, just because of the way that things are shaped.
Uh-huh.
There's about a mile of road and a mile of electric and a mile of phone.
Wow.
And then what else did we do? Oh, a septic system. So most of the dirt doesn't perk properly, meaning that if you put a drain field in, it will just, the gray water will leach, will go into the soil and then sit there. It won't evaporate and bacteria won't be able to do its thing. So there's one corner of the property that has about an acre of soil that does perk very well. And so we put our septic field there, about a half an acre of septic field, and put a 2-inch pipe that feeds all the 8 lots. So there's our septic. The only thing we didn't do is a shared well. Most of the advice that we got from people in Sandpoint who've been developing land, who have developed land a lot over the last couple of decades, the advice is don't bother with a shared well because people hate shared wells. It's a cultural thing.
Yep.
So we didn't do a shared well. And so the septic cost about $100,000. The electric was supposed to cost $43,000. So Northern Lights had their engineer visit. They quoted us $43,000.
Yeah.
It's $3,000 to start the process, and then you pay the balance before they do any work. So $3,000, get the engineer to look it over, and then come back at you with the full quote. Then you go and write the check for the full 43, and they'll come out and do the work, usually within 2 to 4 weeks. Then they sent us a check back for $16,000 a couple months later, because after they did their math, what it actually cost them, they just write a check and send it back to us, which was unexpected, so that was fun.
Yeah. They're not a typical contractor.
Not at all.
Yeah. You're dealing with a power company.
So we talked about doing gas, bringing in gas utility. That would have been like $200,000. So
Wow.
sorry, no gas.
Yep, no.
We talked about doing the well, which would have been $80,000 to do the shared well, and
What did the property cost you?
property
The
cost
40
us
acres.
200, and I want to say 200 and see, the loan is 160. What did we put down? I want to say 220.
Okay, so you're about
40,000 down, 160 in hard money at 10%.
okay. So you're what are you close to 400,000 into this project?
Something like that. I'd have to look at QuickBooks.
Okay, with the road and subdividing
And, yeah, the road,
fees.
a paved road, an asphalt road, would have cost $300,000.
Mm-hmm.
Got a quote for that. $300,000 is way too much money. And I plan to put all the numbers together when we're done. Most of these expenses are now done, but I need to probably do like a 20-minute presentation at the RIA
Okay.
to demonstrate everything on a spreadsheet.
And what should each lot sell for?
We've got them listed at 99 and 95. We started out pretty aggressive at 140 and 120,
Uh-huh.
and then quickly brought it down to 95 to 99. We'll make about $20,000 profit on each one.
Okay.
So not a wild success, but not bad either.
No, yeah. And how long has this project been taking?
We started in November we bought it in November of 2018. We sold the first lot in November of 2019 and sold lots 2 and 3 in December of 2019.
Okay.
We think with market conditions the way they are, we should be able to sell the remaining lots by the end of summer.
Great.
Yeah.
It's nice to do an investment to make some money.
Yeah. And we're working with a builder right now to put together a spec home.
Uh-huh.
We're putting up the land, they're putting up the house.
Yep.
We'll see how that pans out. And until we have a deal penciled. I don't want to go into too many details there, but it's basically going to be a 50-50 profit split. And a little dating period to get to know this particular builder. I'd love to get that going because it'll spark the neighborhood. It'll show, like, for a retail buyer who drives out there, if they see a house going up or a house in,
It gives them a lot more confidence to make a decision.
yeah,
Yeah, and they can see the quality of house that's going in.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
So build a nice house.
I think when you when you look at properties, when you look at real estate as an investor for long enough, you forget what it's like to look at real estate as a retail buyer. And a retail buyer sees a piece of land and doesn't automatically assume that you can, like, add gravel over here for a driveway, and the house can be over here or it can be over there.
Yeah.
So to help them along, you clear out the trees and push in, the road so that you can pull in, drive around in a U-turn, step out, and see this is where the house goes and that kind of thing. So the house, a spec home being built, will help a lot to spark the imagination, if you will. So great relationship there with Josh. It's just gotten better over time, and it's been a very positive experience, I think, for both of us. And the last project, the project that we just started, is a very similar project, about 28 acres south of Sandpoint, and we're working on subdividing that into 9 lots.
Oh, okay. What? How far south? Are you in Sagal or more?
I think it's technically Sagal, yeah. It's like right across the Long Bridge, another half mile past the Long Bridge.
Nice.
Big flat level right on the highway.
Okay.
Paved road. That one, we'll try just listing the lots, all 9, as a package.
Yeah.
And see if we can just turn that.
How big are these lots?
They'll be 2.5 acres each,
Okay.
and the development cost will be significantly lower. So having done some development
Any
now,
utilities?
we'll need to put in all the utilities.
Okay. Water as well?
Well, with 2.5 acres, you have enough. 2.5 acres is kind of a magic minimum size lot for easy well and septic.
Mm-hmm.
Easy because if you have smaller than 2.5 acre lots, you start having to tell people where they can put their septic and where they can't, so that no one's well is close to anyone else's septic.
Yeah.
You need so much distance between a well and septic. So at 2.5 acres, it's easy because now the developer could sell those lots individually,
Yeah.
or build a house on each one as they come, and each one can just have a well and a septic wherever they want them, more or less.
Yeah.
But development costs on that are going to be cheap because all you need is about 800 feet of road, not a mile like we did before. So you can do asphalt there, and it'll be like a $40,000 bill. 800 feet of power, 800 feet of phone. You could even do Northland cable right there. So I think the development on that one would cost somebody less than $100,000. And now you've got lots that are build ready.
Mm-hmm.
Most home builders don't touch that kind of stuff. Most home builders want to plug into water and septic and power,
Yeah.
and then go vertical from there.
They want to know what their costs are.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because if it's not developed, if they have to put in a well or septic, you're just guessing at that point.
and it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
Like home builders that I know will sub out the foundation, and then often be more involved in the framing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're their own electrician or something like that. But most home builders start with a foundation and go vertical. They don't want to deal with a well and septic and pulling in power and dealing with all those other entities. It's a spectrum, you know.
Yeah.
You've got bare land that's forest, and you've got like high density, 3-story apartment buildings in downtown Sandpoint. That's kind of the gamut, the range of the spectrum, the continuum of development.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're developing land, you're just bringing yourself from somewhere along the continuum to further along in the continuum.
Yep.
Maybe you take something maybe take a 10-acre piece and split it into 2 5-acre lots. Well, that's a little bit further down the continuum. Maybe you take those 2 5-acre lots and you put in all the utilities. Well, you're getting a little closer. Maybe you get that thing annexed into the city, and now you can put in 7,000 square foot lots. Well, you've just moved even further down the spectrum, you know.
Yep.
So it's just nudging land development is just bringing things closer to the, you know, high density.
Yeah. And it definitely takes a good skill set or experience, or at least know somebody who's very experienced with land. It certainly helps.
Yeah.
You don't want to just jump into it assuming things.
Yeah. And Josh and I are both, we've learned enough lessons to be wrong enough to ask dumb questions, to call the power company again, to have them explain something again.
Yep.
And if you do that enough, you learn. And now we've learned. We know how to develop land, and it's a great ride. You get to rent excavators. You know, if you rent an excavator, you get to play with it, which is fun.
So you got to do that.
I did, yeah. I put my
So you were
son
that
seat
involved.
I mean,
with the
I wasn't actually doing a lot of work with the excavator.
Okay.
But I was paying the bill.
Yeah.
So I get one of the perks is you get to jump in the excavator and play sometimes, and so I got to put my kids in there and let them drive the sticks or whatever, and you know, carefully, without tipping over the excavator, do some things. We had that first development, that first piece that's 40 acres. We had a big pile of cottonwood trees, cottonwood trunks,
Mm-hmm.
you know, logs, like big pile, like the size of a small church. Just big decks stacked up, and it's cottonwood sitting there for 5 years because nobody buys cottonwood. You can't build houses with cottonwood.
Yeah.
It's very fibrous and doesn't have like a clean grain. It's kind of a knotty or a woven grain almost. So last spring, just before, every spring, there's a day that comes when you have to get a burn permit. And if you burn before that date, you don't have to make any phone calls. You can just burn whatever as big as you want. And after that date, you have to get a burn permit to burn. So right before that date came, I think it was probably in April or May, we lit this one particular deck on fire, and it went up. The flames were 40, 50 feet tall. The embers, the red sparks that come out of the top of these massive piles, we estimated that column of embers probably went 300 or 400 feet tall.
Wow.
Because when you walked back,
Fire department show up?
they did. They sent a pickup truck and one guy out.
Yeah.
He said to me, "Looks like you got a controlled burn going here." And I said, "Yes,
wink, wink.
Controlled burn, exactly."
Yeah.
But when he arrived, and he arrived, and the excavator was actively like clearing some problem areas as the fire was raging. You know.
Yeah.
That was a great time. Like, most people don't get to experience that in their life. Like, the sheer terror of watching this thing, like, once you've lit a pile that big, the fire department's not going to do anything to fix that problem. They're going to take out chainsaws and tear down the forest around it maybe to make sure that it doesn't burn with, but they're not going to, like, hose it down, a fire that big. It was just a good time. It was a really good time.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get within 100 feet of those flames. That's how hot it was. And my kids got to be there for it and stuff too. So it's just been a great time. Yeah, real estate generally. I don't know how you feel about the low points, but I'm at a point where I really feel like there's opportunity for growth when you push yourself. You push yourself into difficult situations. You, to quote Jordan Peterson, you willingly take responsibility for something.
Yeah.
And therefore transcend it.
Mm-hmm.
You feel growth as a person. It's more than just being an employee. And so it's been a great ride.
Yeah, getting through tough times really is the only way you can grow.
Yeah.
And have just so much more confidence when you're off doing other projects. And you know you can, if most people can't mentally take the stress of a real estate investor.
Yeah, that's true. But most real estate investors had their low point where they learned that you can get through it.
Yeah.
And here's how.
But you're doing it, even through the state of misery, St. Louis, Missouri, Missouri. Yeah, no, I'm proud of you. You're sticking with it. I think most people that have gone through what you have gone through would be done with real estate, but you're pushing forward. And I think most people don't understand that with real estate, you pick your problems. You're always going to have problems no matter what you buy or what project you get into or no matter what you're investing in, you're going to have problems, but you get to pick which problems you're going to have. If you're going to buy in an area that's rough, with low income tenants, you're going to deal with those problems.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy a single family house in a very nice neighborhood with great tenants, you're going to have the problem of maybe a lower return. You're always going to be dealing with something.
Yeah. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, market forces push us around so that there's always somebody working on each of those types of problems. The low steady return of a nice 4-bedroom home as a rental, like, market needs people to invest there. And if the return were higher, then more people would invest there, which would compress the return.
Right.
And investments like St. Louis that have the potential for high return require a lot of effort. It's probably better to manage those yourself, or at least be within a mile or two of the problem, so that you can build your team and things like that. But it's going to require a lot of time and effort in order to achieve that outsized return. Mm-hmm. So if the return were greater, more people would move into there. If the pain were greater, people would move out of it.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm not dissing on nice houses. I mean,
I
had a 4-bedroom rental, new construction that I bought a couple of years ago. That was one of the best investments I ever had. And what made that a great investment was just our local market conditions. The market's appreciating like crazy, and we have a very low supply of single-family rentals. So I kind of feel like with real estate investing, you should really go with what the market wants.
Yeah.
Right now, our local market wants housing in general.
Did you keep that one? Did you not keep it?
That single-family house?
Yeah, the new one.
I wish I would have kept it.
I remember when you bought it.
I felt like
you were going to keep it.
I sold it last summer because of that other project I was working on that went, $110,000 over budget.
Yeah.
I didn't exactly have. I felt like I didn't have the resources, even though I could have pulled equity from other properties or something. But I felt like it was a good time to capitalize on the 1 year of appreciation that I had on that. The tenants were going to move out after the 1 year. I didn't have to do a thing to it. I think I made about $50,000 on it, plus the cash flow for that year. So it was just a cash out. I need this cash to finish this other house. But if I really wanted to, I bet you I could have pulled the resources from somewhere else. If I would have kept that house, I mean, today it'd be worth another $20,000. But it's an easy pass. I mean, I didn't even have that was the only property I didn't have a property manager on. I just
didn't need it.
I didn't need it. You're dealing with a family paying $1,800 a month for a new construction house. There's not many maintenance calls.
Yeah.
I think I had one time out of the whole year, he called me to let me know that the heater wasn't working, and I had to spend a minute and a half calling the HVAC company that installed the unit to go fix it, and they did.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't. That was that's the luxury of picking your investments.
Yeah.
If you have a new construction single family house, I mean, my whole time managing it was probably under a half hour. It wasn't much. It's very passive, and then I just used that cozy site to collect rent, so rent was collected automatically. It was that's one regret I guess I have, is just selling that nice house.
Yeah.
I have other nice houses, but they're not as nice.
Sure was convenient that you had that equity ready to just punch in the nose with.
Yeah. I mean, it helped. It saved me.
Yeah.
The funny thing was, before I ever bought it, I was asking some other private money lenders what they thought of this investment, because I had just done another flip where I made like 60 grand, and I didn't want to throw that in a retirement account or anything, and there was nothing to flip on the market at that time. So I was thinking, what if I just bought this new construction house, and I ran the numbers, and the numbers looked okay. And I showed it to my private money people, and they're like, "No, don't do that." Ended up being, I did it anyway.
Huh. So how has your strategy changed over the last year then? Do you feel like you need more of a buffer in cash, or do you feel like having equity in a few of your properties is good enough because you get to?
I think my strategy has changed over the years a little bit more, where I look at my net worth a little bit harder.
Okay.
And I try to make decisions 10 years. I try to look 10 years in the future.
Yeah.
About if I kept this project, and I used the calculators on like Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
If I kept it for 10 years versus selling it in 6 months, what's going to be better for our family's future?
Yeah.
And it's almost always just keeping these properties.
Yeah.
But sometimes I get into them with partners, and I have to sell or refinance, or I may not. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the house, but I mean, my first objective is I want to try to keep it. But if it's going to have a low cash flow or maybe break even, I probably wouldn't do the deal anyway. But anything that I buy, it has to have about at least a 20% profit margin if I resell it as a flip, and it has to cash flow if I decide to keep it as a rental.
Yeah.
Or I won't buy it.
And
But no-
cash flow meaning like $100 a door cash flow. Do you have a number on that?
At least 200.
200 a door.
Yeah. 200 net after all expenses, including figuring potential repairs
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah. I've got an idea that I don't have the money to do it right now, but I think it's a brilliant idea, and it kind of goes in line with shifting more to that long-term thinking. So, feels like, well, we've talked about how buying new construction can be a good investment, especially as the market's rising.
Yeah.
You buy it, you're going to get good tenants. It's a brand new home. You're going to get some appreciation right away if it's a growing market, if it's an expanding market. But to me, there's a conflict of interest that I'm constantly bothered by, and that is whoever built the home or whose ever project it was that they commissioned to build, their incentive is to sell, right? Their incentive is not to make something that's going to last a long time necessarily. Like, in our heart of hearts, we do our best to deliver a good product. But the incentives are such that you sell a home that's like something that somebody wants to live in. But if you were to build your own home, you would choose to do some things different probably, right?
A little bit. Yep.
Now, if you could build your own investment homes, you could make some decisions along the way that might be different compared to buying a home that this new construction that you're going to use as an investment. So maybe you want sheetrock that's a little heavier duty just because it won't get bumped as easily when people move in.
Well, you want a higher quality paint.
Higher quality paint.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want polished concrete floors and single level because...
Or LVP.
Sure.
Yeah, LVP flooring is like tenant proof.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want a 50-year metal roof because maybe it's not quite as pretty as 30-year asphalt shingles, but a 50-year metal roof is a good roof, and it costs the same or less than the asphalt shingles.
And you want gutters, so you don't damage your foundation over time.
Yeah, maybe you build with just bigger eaves and a French drain, so that the gutters can't be. You don't need the gutters, and they don't rip off. Maybe you shape the foundation to be rectangular, and the roof to shed where there's no doors, so that you don't even need gutters if you're careful enough. maybe you put up the really nice the gutters that are so strong that you can stand on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those decisions, like the roof is a great example of a decision that you can make as an investor building your own investment. It doesn't necessarily cost more, but is going to give you a solid return over decades.
Yeah.
If you did a duplex, if you build a duplex that way, maybe you do it as a barn dominium with a metal shell. Now you have a 50-year no-fade warranty on the color of the exterior. You got a 50-year roof, and you could build into that duplex some cool features like a 4-foot wet wall down the middle. And if all of your sinks and tubs and toilets back onto that wet wall, and for the next 100 years, that's an easy repair. Those plumbing things are easy to fix.
Oh, I see. Like
Inside of
it's
that-
exposed on the inside of this little hallway or something? All
Yes.
the plumbing?
Yes. So you have
Yeah.
a door on the back of the duplex
Yep.
that only the landlord has access to,
Mm-hmm.
and that door walks you down between the units. You just have bare studs. You see you're stepping over the plumbing or
Yeah.
electrical coming out. Maybe your Wi-Fi access points are in there.
If city code would allow it, I mean, you might need a lot of insulation still within that.
Might need some
Yeah.
insulation, yeah.
But that is
City
interesting.
code shouldn't be a problem because wet walls are totally a thing in commercial buildings.
Are they? Okay.
They're not as common in duplexes
Yeah.
or single family homes, right? But if you wanted, if you're aware of that kind of a strategy, then you could use it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to pay taxes against the square feet of livable space, not the wet wall. So like, why not?
Yeah.
So to me, there's like a lot of little things you could do there. And if you did it at scale, if you develop the land yourself, save a pile of money. If you build yourself, commission to build yourself, you save a bunch of money. And so if you could develop, say, 10 acres into 4 duplexes, that's 8 units, 1,500 square feet each, rent those to families, solid investment for long term. That's something that I've been thinking about lately. It's
So
not a
that's
strategy
building-
that I've heard anybody else
Mhm.
talk about. It's one I've developed myself, and so I wonder if I'm just crazy because nobody else is talking about it. You know what I mean?
No, you're not crazy. But then again, then you're going to get a different type of tenant that I'm thinking of. So I like to invest ideally in neighborhoods where there's mostly homeowners. And,
Okay.
and where the 1 or 2 oddballs houses that actually have renters in them.
So that the
So
neighbors
that the
set the tone of taking care of your stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you have a neighborhood full of rental houses, you can usually tell.
Sure.
And then you're not going to have that same type of appreciation that you would over time as a neighborhood known to be a C class. It's just tenantville.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism. So, like a lot of apartment complexes are built with these ideas in mind of it'll be all green, and
Yeah.
they're all just apartment complexes.
Because the idea with the single family houses in a nice neighborhood, you're renting to somebody who should be buying a house, but for whatever reason, maybe they just got to town and they want to shop for a year.
Yeah.
And they don't mind spending above average rent. They're in a nice neighborhood. It's newer house. So you're going after those type of tenants, which do exist.
Yeah.
They're not going to be tenants forever. Yeah. Anyway, we're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a lot of rabbit holes.
That's all right. Well, Jacob, I'm proud of you. You're sticking with it. You're
Thanks.
doing a great job. If people want to reach out to you, do you want anyone to reach out to you ever?
Sure. Hit me up on email. My email address is jacobmarble@gmail.com.
All right.
I'm happy to get lunches with people or coffee or just chat.
Buy this guy lunch
Yeah.
or coffee.
Yeah, I love connecting with people, and I appreciate the work that you do.
Well, thank you.
You put on a great RIA meeting, and I really appreciate the one in Sandpoint. It's tiny, but
It's fun.
it's
That's
an
the fun
hour-
one.
It's an hour closer than Coeur d'Alene for me.
Yeah.
And it is a fun one. It's very informal.
Mm-hmm.
We can. I feel like people let their hair down a little bit more.
We can drink beer.
That's right. Sell in basically a bar.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I appreciate what you do for the real estate community in North Idaho.
Thanks.
It's big. So,
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, you get what it's karma.
Yeah, what goes around
My
comes around,
business has
sure.
grown a lot thanks to it, thanks to the
Okay.
community. So glad I can help out.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. This is a long one, but it was a great one.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Investor Shed podcast. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for instant access to all future episodes. If you or someone you know has investing experience or stories to share, reach out to us in the comments or via email.